I'm Jill Smith, and I live at 207 Broad Street on the Historic District North Side.
Do you know when this house was built?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I do. I was, I cannot remember why I was sitting in Miss Erin Park's living room probably 20 years ago. I think I was looking for some railroad information, and she asked me where I lived. And I said, I live at 207 Broad Street. And she said, that yellow house with the wraparound porch? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, I was born in that house. My daddy built it. Her name was Erin Ford. And her dad, and I can't remember his first name. Um, he was the first engineer, or he was one of the first engineers, might not have been the first one, on the GM and N line that became the GM and O. It was, first it was the Ripley Railroad, and then it was the GM and N. Had all these evolutions of names, but it's the north-south line, and now it's the Tangleville Trail. But he came here and built this house and raised 8 children in it, and she was born in this house.
Do you know the history of the previous owners?
Well, there's been some interesting people live here. And I don't think I said it was built in 1905, but that's when it was built. Through the years, I've had people stop by and say, oh, I used to live there, and I don't always remember their names, but I do remember one that I've been told that lived here, Steamboat Fulton. He was a man that I'd heard of Steamboat Fulton before I ever moved to New Albany because he was on the Johnny Carson show when I was a kid, I guess. I was probably a teenager when a county away somebody heard that a New Albany man was going to be on the Johnny Carson show. And I have since heard, just in the last couple of days, that what was the first internet? It was the Johnny Carson show. So I thought it really was the first internet because, the Dukes were on the Johnny Carson show. Well, Steamboat Fulton was, and he worked as a clerk, I think, on the Frisco Railroad. This house has a railroad history, doesn't it? I thought about that combination, but he would pick up gin bottles on the side of the railroad. People would throw them out there for whatever reason, and he made this ginophone. And if you'll recall, back in an art exhibit we had a redone genophones where you fill these bottles up with water and hang them, suspend them, and you can play music on it. What I don't remember is what he played on the Johnny Carson show, but he was kind of famous for that. And he lived here. Miss Stanford's grandson, that's the little house down the street, he told me he lived here. And I think he's the one that put the red shag carpet upstairs and kind of did a 70s redo on it, which I've redone that, and I just have a floor and a couple of bedrooms up there. But yeah, and now we have me here for 20 years.
Real quick, back to the genophone. So, like a xylophone, but made with gin bottles
Right,
and water,
right,
or possibly gin.
possibly.
Okay. Okay. But like, what would you call the architectural style of this home?
Well, I got an architect from the Department of Archives and History to ride around through here. He says it's a modified craftsman style, and when you see these kind of built-up piers, then you have the post on that. That's what he used it. But he said it was kind of it's kind of like a scrap quilt of a house, and it is. If you look inside, my house obviously was built at a lot of different times, and if you had 8 kids, he probably had a room for 2 or 3, and then you had to build another room for 2 or 3 more, and that's kind of how this house is. Some of the rooms have 12-foot ceilings, some have 10-foot, but then when you get to the kitchen, it's 8 feet. So, it is a scrap quilt of a house, I think.
I noticed that the name of your home is Sanctuary.
It is. I'm sure some of the other people in the community have talked about our effort to, I guess, recognize some of William Faulkner's books. And my house is a sanctuary for us, my family. Even though it's not always clean inside, and It's not the most beautiful place. It feels so good to come home, you know.
What's it like to live here?
Well, if I've got my eyes closed and I'm laying in there on the couch, I know when somebody turns that curve because there's a certain kind of bump, bump, bump. I don't know what that is, but I always know when somebody's driving right there. But other than the guy that runs his motors too loud sometimes, it's pretty quiet, especially on Saturdays and Sundays. And you know most people that are around here that come by. So one of the things I think is interesting about living in this community, because I love plants, my yard is not manicured, and I plant in every square inch I can find because I don't want to mow the yard, and I love plants. But you can see from yard to yard that people have passed along plants through the years. I recall at different times, everybody will have the same thing blooming, and you'll know that through the years people have shared their plants. I'm not like that. Or the birds have planted them. I've had some birds plant some things for me. But I'm the woman that's got the yard that, if you like a landscape yard, it kind of makes you cringe. Because I got this fern that's 3 feet tall and it's just kind of wild.
You have a lot of yard art.
I do, yeah.
Is that something you enjoy collecting?
Well, I went through a period of that. Yeah. I see things I like and I just put it out there somewhere.
I think that a yard like this is like a treasure hunt.
Yeah, it kind of is. A lot of the plants, in this yard go with the era of the house. Although, I have plants in my yard that came from my mother's yard. I brought with me, and some of them, like those huge ferns, I have to really cut back on them. But I also grow a lot of native plants because I believe that's what God wants us to do. If I had enough room, I don't know that I would ever quit planting. I don't have enough room here to really do all I want to do. But one thing I wanted to mention to you about this street, and I don't know whether you have noticed that how when you're on these, to a certain point, you just go to a stop sign and go forward from Cleveland Street coming north. But when you get to Broad Street, you have to go, it's offset, and I don't want.
Please tell us.
Well, those early years, like the Cleveland Street survey, it was the Langston subdivision. That's what that was up there. And as they came this way, it became the Goodman survey, and then the Goodman-Rogers survey. And this was kind of the edge of some one of those original surveys. So the next survey, instead of going parallel with the railroad, it went on true north. So that's why I think it's just kind of an interesting little side note that, for whatever reason, they didn't bring it straight on across. This, whoever the surveyor was, said, oh no, we need to be on true north and not parallel to the railroad. Because really a lot of this was built because of the railroad and the growth that brought with it. But on all these streets you got this little weird curve, and that's why. Well, if you're laying out a city, I don't think you would intentionally make that curve. And, some people, even though they're supposed to stop, they don't. That's peanut, by the way. You just kind of do that and get around it.
Do you think you'll stay here forever?
Well, I'm 2 blocks from where I work currently, and that's a pretty good. I can walk home anytime I want to and run back to work, and it doesn't take me much time. So I do like it here. I grew up on a farm, though. I miss the wide open spaces.